I never thought the moment I became a widow would happen while my husband was still breathing. That's how it started. Not with tears, not with screaming, just a single ice-cold realization in the dark. The man I married had already chosen someone else, and I was the only one who didn't know it yet. My name is Zara. I was 29, running a six-figure content business from a sunlit loft in downtown Chicago. People saw the pearl-beaded gowns and the flawless feed and assumed my life was filtered perfection. They never saw the color-coded spreadsheets, the 3 a.m. contracts, the way I'd train my eyes to catch every single detail, because details, I learned, eventually become weapons. I noticed everything. I noticed the exact shade of white my mother-in-law wore when she glided toward our sweetheart table like she owned the marble floor. I noticed how my husband's eyes flicked away the second she appeared. I noticed the cake knife already missing from its silver tray at 8:41 p.m., right after the last slow song faded. Her name was Nadia. My husband was Amir. And that night, at our own reception, she decided to renew her vows with my father-in-law on my cake table, in my dress code, in front of 200 stunned guests. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply leaned into my planner and whispered 4 words that changed everything. Cut the power. Now. The room plunged into velvet darkness. Only the amber emergency lights remained, turning the ballroom into a stunned, golden shadow. Gasps rippled like a wave. Her voice, mid-sentence, mid-performance, died in her throat. I took the backup mic, calm as winter glass, and spoke directly into the black. This reception is not available for hijacking. That was the moment the mask finally cracked. But the real story, the one that ended my marriage, began long before the lights went out. I met Amir at a charity gala when I was 25. He was charming, steady, the kind of man who remembered how you took your coffee and opened doors without making a show. 3 dates in, he warned me with a soft laugh. My family can be a lot. I smiled and said, mine too. I thought he meant loud holidays and nosy aunties. I had no idea I was walking into a quiet empire built entirely around one woman's comfort. The first red flag came 11 months before the wedding. Nadia invited me to lunch, just as girls, at a restaurant where the water glasses cost more than my first brand deal. Over seared scallops, she smiled and said, after the wedding, you'll naturally want to become more private with your content. I set my fork down. My job is public. She tilted her head, sympathetic. It's a hobby that grew up, sweetheart. Marriage changes things. Family comes first. I told Amir that night. He sighed, rubbed his face, and said the sentence I would hear on repeat for the next year. She doesn't mean it the way it sounds. Just ignore her. Ignore her became his love language, his peacekeeping strategy, his quiet betrayal. Then came the apartment hunt. I found a bright 2-bedroom in the West Loop with perfect natural light for filming. I sent him the listing with 20 heart emojis. He loved it, until Nadia saw it. Suddenly the neighborhood was too chaotic, the closets impractical, and within 10 minutes he had 3 listings, all within walking distance of her house. I found a text while he was in the shower. One line burned itself behind my eyes. A wife doesn't need downtown chaos. She needs stability close to family. He laughed it off when I confronted him. She's just excited. But we still toured her choices. I still smiled through the showings. I still swallowed. I kept swallowing until the night I watched her destroy a 7-year-old girl with 6 soft words. My little niece had spilled juice on the tablecloth at Eid dinner. Nadia looked at her with that gentle, reasonable voice and said, careless girls grow up to be careless women. I saw the child physically shrink. I cleaned the spill, took her outside, and on the drive home asked Amir if he'd heard what his mother said. He stared at the road. She doesn't mean it like that. That was the night something inside me stopped bending. Wedding planning turned into a silent war of attrition. Every choice I made was adjusted. My florist was too modern. My bridal shower venue was tacky. My honeymoon sponsor backdrop was an advertisement, not a wedding. She even tried to book my makeup artist for a bridal adjacent look for herself. 2 weeks before the big day, she texted me, white doesn't belong to any one bride, Zara. I replied, but this wedding does. Don't wear white. She hung up. Amir told me, She won't actually do it. He knew. He'd always known. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Amir cried real tears when he saw me. For 4 sacred hours, I let myself believe we could still win. Then cocktail hour ended. At 7:31 p.m., Nadia reappeared in blinding white. Fitted crepe, pearl buttons, a short train, bridal enough to make the room whisper, deniable enough to gaslight later. I felt the ground tilt. I stayed calm. I documented. I moved pieces like a chess master who'd been playing in the dark for months. At 8:02 p.m., I pulled Amir into the service hallway, held up my phone with the proof, her unauthorized stage request, her texts, the secret vow cards, the extra floral arch, and said the sentence that ended us. You knew. His face didn't show surprise. It showed recognition. And in that moment, under the humming fluorescent lights of a hallway that smelled like warm bread and regret, I finally understood. Every time he'd said, ignore her. Every time he'd chosen silence. Every time he'd let her rewrite our life so she could stay centered, he hadn't been keeping peace. He'd been keeping her throne. The lights came back on 30 seconds later, but something in me stayed dark. I walked back into the ballroom, mic still in my hand, and looked straight at the woman in white who had just tried to steal my night, my spotlight, my future. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, loud enough for every phone already recording. Some mothers raise sons. Some mothers raise hostages. And some husbands never stop paying the ransom. The room went dead silent. Nadia's smile froze like cracked porcelain. Amir looked at me like I'd just murdered the version of him he liked best. And me? I finally stopped swallowing. That night, I slept in the honeymoon suite alone. 3 months later, the divorce papers were signed. People still ask me if I regret cutting the lights, going viral, burning the bridge in front of 200 guests. I don't, because the moment the power died, so did the last illusion that I was marrying a man. I was marrying a mirror, and mirrors only reflect whoever is standing behind them. So tell me, if the person you loved most in the world had been quietly choosing his mother over you for years, would you have cut the lights? Or would you still be sitting in the dark, smiling for the camera, pretending the white dress wasn't meant for her all along? Drop your answer below. I read every single one, because some betrayals don't end with a scream. They end with the lights going out, and finally seeing who is always standing in the spotlight.